Hi everyone, and welcome to today's webinar with Nature Canada on defending nature from chemical rodent control with the Defend Them All Foundation. We're so excited to have you here today. We'll just wait a few moments as folks trickle into the call, and I'm really excited to have this opportunity to chat with everyone today. Before we get started, just some reminders that today's webinar is headquartered in Ottawa, Ontario, which is the traditional unceded territory of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe peoples, who have lived on this territory and nurtured this land for millennia and continue to do so. We thank them for their culture, presence, and nurturing to this land. And we recognize all of us work and live in different places across Turtle Island. And we encourage you to take time now to reflect and share where you're joining today across the country, either in the chat below or in the comments. And please check out native-land.org to find out which traditional Indigenous territories you are residing on today. So thanks everyone. And as this is a Zoom webinar, we will have the Q&A function available in the tab there to get to at the end of today's presentation. And it will be recorded and shared on Nature Canada's YouTube channel. And if you haven't met me before, hello, my name's Autumn Jordan, and I am the Bird Friendly City Organizer at Nature Canada, which is a action plan to protect, defend, and restore bird populations in our communities from coast to coast to coast. And one of the ways that we can protect birds is by preventing the use of chemical rodent control like rodenticides. We've seen in British Columbia amazing progress being made with their rodenticide bans across the province, and we continue to advocate for this push across the country so that our raptors and other birds are safe from chemicals such as rodenticides and other pesticides. So with that, I'd like to introduce today's speakers from the Defend Them All Foundation. Lindsay Zeal from the Defend Them All Foundation is the Executive Director, and the nonprofit organization is dedicated to securing a better future for animals, wildlife, and their habitats through community advocacy, education, and legal guidance. At the intersection of animal and environmental law is what Lindsay specializes in, especially on the impacts of toxic chemicals and natural resource extractions on ecosystem. Alison Hansen, the campaign director and co-founder of Rodenticide Free Ontario, leads and coordinates advocates working to promote humane, chemical-free rodent management policies and practices in Ontario. She brings a lifetime of experience in animal advocacy, campaign development, and communications, as well as an in-depth understanding of the social, political, and economic forces challenging the movement. Welcome, Alison and Lindsay. We're so excited to have you here today, so I'll pass it over to them.
Thank you so much for the introduction, Autumn, and to Nature Canada for hosting this presentation. We are so grateful for the opportunity to share what we've learned about chemical rodent control and relevant law and policy in Canada, and I hope that what we provide here is practical and useful. If you had told me 5 years ago that I would be here before you speaking about rodenticides, I never would have believed it. But the scope of the chemical rodent control problem, the power of the pesticide industry, and the cruel nature of these poisons has become something that I now actually can't stop talking about. Recognizing that this topic is probably not new to most of this audience, we have organized this presentation by questions that commonly arise in conversations around rodenticide law and policy. We're hopeful that we can answer some of your questions and help you more effectively advocate against these products. To start, and to get this one out of the way, because there's one in every crowd that wants to know, what about the rodents in my attic or in my crawl space? What am I to do about rodents in my house if I can't use poisons? Well, this is a completely rational concern. Rodents can be a problem, and it is certainly not our intent to imply that anyone should have to live with rodents in their home or other structure. I can certainly relate. Actually, in 2018, I was a new homeowner, very excited about having a yard. I got a bird feeder, and very shortly thereafter, began seeing some tunneling under my deck. So I began searching for help and spoke with several companies who, in some cases, very aggressively insisted that I needed to lay down poisons to keep rodents out of my home. Luckily, I did come across a company offering exclusion and rodent proofing services and even guaranteed their work. I was really taken back by the amount of misinformation out there on rodent management, and at the same time was working with one of our volunteer associates from British Columbia, Marie Turcott, who just happens to be very passionate about rats. And so began an extensive research project. We had no idea what we were getting into or what we could achieve. But as more and more reports of poisoned owls were turning up in BC, we connected with local advocates and have been supporting their efforts there ever since. And more recently in Ontario, where Allison has really led advocacy efforts in that province. Unfortunately, Marie couldn't join us today, but I'm honored and truly grateful to be presenting here with Allison, whose relentless advocacy inspires me all the time and truly keeps me energized. I'm going to let her tell you Torchy's story, but first we'll summarize the rodenticide problem as we understand it. Rodenticides are pesticides specifically designed to attract and kill unwanted rodents and other wildlife. They are highly toxic, environmentally persistent, bioaccumulative, and well known to adversely affect a broad range of non-target animals from birds of prey to bears, bats, and even invertebrates. They do not solve rodent intrusion issues. By killing off a resident population, you simply make way for new groups to move in, likely attracted to the flavors and colors provided in the baits, and it creates a perpetual cycle with ever-increasing costs to the property owner as well as the environment. Making matters worse, rodent populations that have developed resistance can consume even greater amounts of bait with reduced effects, posing even greater risks to secondary consumers. Poisoned rodents are also known to be more susceptible to disease and may increase transmission of pathogens. You will often hear rodenticides categorized in different ways by the pesticide industry and regulatory bodies, such as first-generation multi-dose, second-generation single-dose anticoagulant, SGARs, or acute rodenticides. Regardless of these complicated distinctions in terminology, which are confusing and really distract from their harsh realities, it's important to understand that rodenticides are all dangerous and quite literally designed to kill. Anticoagulants cause slow, agonizing suffering as victims bleed to death. Other rodenticides kill by damaging nerves, leading to paralysis, convulsions, and eventually death, or by producing a toxic gas in the stomach, resulting in hypoxia.
In the fall of 2021, I lost my rescue dog Torchy due to liver failure from the bioaccumulation of rodenticides. After helplessly watching her suffer, I set out to learn more about these products and made a commitment to do something. Since then, I obtained a structural pest management license in Ontario and also have learned a great deal about strategies to more effectively, humanely, and economically address rodent issues. I will start by saying that while I don't like the term pest to refer to any living being, nor do I like the word control, I will, however, be using these terms today so that you all know what I'm referring to. Humans' desire to control wildlife and other beings is what has gotten us in this dire situation of biodiversity loss. The risks and consequences of these products are far-reaching. These poisons are making their way into every level of the food chain, not just our raptor and mammal friends, but also aquatic life and human food. And that's only animal products. And hey, even slugs and worms have been known to access bait boxes. A common claim that the pest control industry makes is that more evidence is needed to confirm that rodenticides are a significant cause of death. Let me explain why this is an inaccurate claim. Not only are these poisons causing deaths, but there's a multitude of sublethal effects from exposures that will ultimately contribute to and or hasten death. Decades of research has established that the sublethal effects of rodenticide exposure cause a variety of biological and behavioral symptoms in multiple species. Effects of rodenticide exposure in wildlife include lethargy, shortness of breath, anorexia, bloody diarrhea, changes in behavior, tenderness of the joints, decreased clutch sizes, and mange, to name a few. Extreme cases of mange, believed to be associated with rodenticide toxicity, has become more prevalent in North America. What is happening is that rodenticides are suppressing the immune systems of animals exposed to mange, therefore making them more susceptible. Frequent closing of the eyes and reduced flying activity has been observed in owls and other raptors as early as 5 days after consuming 3 poisoned rodents. Did you know that an owl eats an average of 3 rodents a day? Such behavioral symptoms can give rise to collisions with vehicles and windows, resulting in trauma-inflicted injuries such as bone fractures and hemorrhaging. Another issue is reduced reproductive success, reduced hunting and survival fitness in predator and scavenger species. This is well documented with sublethal exposures. This is demonstrating that even at sublethal levels, rodenticide products are known to reduce the overall biological fitness of wildlife. Because these poisons bioaccumulate and are known to persist in the livers of animals that are exposed for upwards of a year, it is clear to see how problematic these products are as a contributing factor in this current biodiversity crisis. Reported incidents of poisoning are grossly underestimated. An analysis of necropsy reports by Defend Them All revealed severe inadequacies in the collection and reporting data in British Columbia by government agencies. In addition to customarily ignoring signs and symptoms of rodenticide toxicity for purposes of diagnosis, very rarely are toxicologists testing raptors for rodenticides, even where the direct cause of death is identified as trauma, hemorrhaging, emaciation, or a combination thereof. To illustrate in numerical terms, in the analysis, only 33 of the 299 raptor carcasses submitted for necropsies were tested for rodenticide presence, pointing to significant underreporting. Similarly problematic data collection is happening in the US and across Canada. To make data collection more difficult, there are significant costs associated with sending in a body for necropsy for wildlife rehabbers. When wildlife rehabilitation centers are struggling financially to the point of some having to cease operations, you can see how they have to make the choice between spending money on helping an animal that may survive or sending a body in for necropsy, especially when there is no guarantee that a toxicology screen will actually be done.
The power to regulate pesticides is shared between the levels of government. Under the Pest Control Products Act, Health Canada sets the standards for registration of pest control products. The PMRA, or the Pest Management Regulatory Agency, administers the act and is responsible for registration, reevaluation, and to promote sustainable pest management strategies. Provinces and territories may further restrict or prohibit the sale, use, storage, transportation, and disposal of pesticides as long as their rules are consistent and no less restrictive than federal law. Provinces may grant municipalities additional authority to further regulate pesticides. It seems to be broadly assumed and is often even used as a marketing strategy to say that Health Canada regulates rodenticide products and so they must be safe. Well, what most people don't realize is that federal approval reflects a determination of acceptable risk, not safety. Pre-market risk assessments and regulatory decisions for new products are based on studies conducted by the registrant, not the PMRA, which logically raises serious questions around the transparency and integrity of data as well as bias. The PMRA itself has acknowledged these shortcomings and in doing so, recently initiated a targeted review of the Pest Control Products Act, which aims to modernize the pesticide review process and increase transparency. Reiterating these goals, a science advisory committee was established to support evidence-based decision-making on risk and value assessments and to develop risk management options. Unfortunately, confidence in this committee was lost when Dr. Bruce Lamphere publicly resigned as co-chair, citing lack of transparency and scientific oversight. Dr. Lamphere, who is a highly respected scientist that specializes in environmental neurotoxins and professor at the Simon Fraser University, called for a complete overhaul in the pesticide regulatory system, and in his public resignation letter stated, "I worry that the Scientific Advisory Committee and my role as co-chair provides a false sense of security that the PMRA is protecting Canadians from toxic pesticides. Based on my experience over the last year, I cannot provide such assurance. We can no longer rely on an obsolete regulatory system that protects the pesticide industry more than it protects Canadians." The PMRA's mandate is to protect the health of Canadians and the environment against unacceptable risks from the use of pesticides. In furtherance of this objective, the PMRA is obligated to afford consideration and protection to future generations and encourage the development of sustainable pest management strategies consistent with the precautionary principle. So it follows that if they exist, alternative measures of rodent management that minimize risks to human health and the environment must be exhausted before turning to potentially harmful chemicals. Recognizing the risks that rodenticides pose to human health and the environment, Health Canada adopted risk mitigation measures in 2013, requiring some products to be kept in tamper-proof bait boxes and restricting some products to indoor use only. These measures are inadequate and illogical. Rodents do not die inside these boxes, nor remain indoors. They disperse away from buildings and into surrounding natural habitats, often seeking water to quench a thirst symptomatic of rodenticide poisoning. Behavioral symptoms also make them more available to secondary predators, and they are known to spend more time outside of their dens during all hours of the day as they begin to suffer. A reevaluation of 8 rodenticide compounds is currently underway at the federal level, with a projected date for consultation set for late 2026 or early 2027. Meanwhile, products containing these toxic compounds are widely used across Canada, magnifying threats to biodiversity. Clearly, provinces and local governments must step in to take bolder action against these products. So you might be saying, yeah, but won't rodent populations increase if we ban rodenticides? Well, the pesticide industry would love for you to think so. Fear-based marketing is an integral part of the pest management industry ethos and has been used for literally decades. For example, you may have seen Orkin's Rattiest City rankings, which I think are published annually. These rankings are based on the number of service calls, not actual rodent population estimates, which of course are not an accurate measure of really anything, but certainly tend to imply that rodents are on the rise in certain localities. Likewise, since British Columbia took some action on rodenticides last year, industry-backed reports claim that they have seen an increase in rodent populations and a cost increase for pest management services. First, it's extremely important to know that rodenticides are not banned in British Columbia. The action that the province took last year only partially restricts 3 products out of many, and even restricted products are allowed in 9 broadly defined categories. Also, investor documents reveal that Orkin has dramatically increased advertising expenditures over especially the last 2 years, as you can see on the chart here I've provided on the slide. Finally, and maybe this is some wishful thinking, but it's entirely possible that people in British Columbia are now seeking more proactive measures to ensure that their homes are rodent-proofed, given all of the publicity and press and success, really, of the Rodenticide Free initiative in British Columbia. That would not be a surprising outcome. To drive home this point, and because I couldn't resist sharing the irony here, clearly rodenticides are still used in British Columbia. I took this picture coming in by bus at customs from the United States earlier this year in April. There is no excuse for having a poison bait box under the welcome sign in British Columbia. So while we have seen some progress, and growing awareness is definitely worth celebrating, we have a long way to go. Nonetheless, we're confident that the pest management industry can and will evolve to meet society's new expectations for properly preventative pest management strategies.
You'll often hear of the term integrated pest management when pest management is referred to. The definitions of the term vary and continue to evolve as new science and management techniques emerge. But generally, integrated pest management refers to a strategic approach to pest management that aims to reduce risks to humans and the environment by only using pesticides — rodenticides are a pesticide, by the way — as a temporary last resort, which we all know is rarely happening. IPM advocates for exclusion, prevention, attraction reduction, habitat modification, non-chemical, so that means no pesticides, control methods such as snap traps and biological control wherever possible. Listen, it is in the economic interest of these pest control companies that use poisons to ignore the steps I just mentioned. Allowing such conditions to persist invites new populations of rodents to invade, giving rise to continued business, like the subscription-based programs that the pest control providers sell. And don't forget that these poisons are flavored to make them more attractive to the intended target. By using these poisons, rodents are actually being attracted to your dwelling. Rodenticides are not an effective means of dealing with an intrusion, and this is evidenced by the fact that these companies remain on contract to supply these poisons for indefinite durations of time. To quote a friend of mine, there is no safe use of any poison. Often we will hear from the companies that use these poisons that preventative pest control strategies are prohibitively expensive. The claim that this preventative strategy is prohibitively expensive compared to rodenticides reflects an outdated mindset focused on short-term costs over long-term value and public well-being. Let's think about an ongoing, never-ending contract for poisons compared to a one-time visit from a company that properly seals up your home. Keep in mind that most of these companies that actually deal with a rodent intrusion and properly seal your home do not use rodenticides and warranty their work too. Rodent exclusion may require some upfront costs, but it will certainly pay off in the long term by eliminating the need for recurring poison subscriptions that perpetually expose communities, loved ones, and other beings to toxic chemicals. Environmental justice demands that there is equitable access to safe, non-toxic pest control methods to protect all communities, particularly those already overburdened by environmental hazards. For reasons such as this, governments must create policies that correct these inequities and incentivize the widespread adoption of sustainable, non-chemical pest management practices. By investing in preventative measures and promoting ecologically sound solutions, we can safeguard public health, preserve the environment, and build more resilient communities in the long run. Rodent proofing is actually not hard and more straightforward than you would think. I do have a license, but keep in mind this is not personalized advice. If you have a specific issue, I do encourage you to seek assistance from wildlife removal professionals, and I would be more than happy to help find one for you or guide you on what to look for in a truly humane and eco-friendly company. Rodent proofing can actually be easier and cheaper than expected and pays off in the long run as opposed to the costs, financial and environmental, of poisons. As an added bonus, it can be effective in reducing heating and cooling costs by improving energy efficiency. As I mentioned, I would be more than happy to help anyone find a company that provides chemical-free rodent exclusion services. But here are a few things that you can do on your own to mitigate and hopefully eliminate any unwanted guests. Seal off all entry points. Remove brush and branches from against the building. Keep garbage in a sealed container. Rinse all recyclables. do not feed wildlife, including birds. And I know that this is a tough one to wrap your head around, but we all know how messy birds are at feeders. They throw seeds all over the place, which attracts rodents. Keep your barbecue clean and away from your house. Don't leave your companion animals' dirty dishes or food outside. And in some cases, traps may be temporarily necessary if rodents have made it indoors and present an immediate threat. This would only be until the entryways are identified and sealed. However, as rodents are known not to stay indoors, companies that provide humane solutions use one-way doors to clear and permanently seal the structure. Thank you so much for your interest in this issue, and in honor of my sweet Torchy and all of the others who have paid the price for the use of these poisons, I hope you will share what you have learned here today with others to help keep all beings safe from these poisons.
Thank you for listening. It truly motivates us to know that there are others out there as interested in defending animals in their habitats. Please do find and follow us on social media. Feel free to reach out if we can support your advocacy efforts on rodenticides or another animal welfare cause, and consider giving to support our important work. Thanks again.